Hello, and welcome to the Secular Homeschool Revolution podcast. I am your host, Ashley. If you are here, please know that this podcast is for, secular, progressive, BIPOC homeschoolers who want to take up some space because there hasn't been very much room for us before, but we are here, we are loud, we are proud. So welcome. Today's episode is going to be about my week in teaching my kids about immigration. I found this really great lesson plan from the Immigration History Research Center. It's a completely free lesson, and it is such a gem because it lays everything out for you in such a beautiful way. It's broken down into 3 units. It gives you video suggestions, discussion prompts, literature to read. And so I'm really excited to share that with you all. But before we get started, I just wanted to give you guys a life update because I have been MIA for the last few weeks. Where have I been? What have I been doing? It's been crazy, y'all. So I've had the opportunity to be on 2 other podcasts, Homeschool Yo Kids. I also was on Somebody's Mama, and I will be interviewing this week with Elon with Homeschool Our Way, Homeschool Your Way. So I'm really excited about those opportunities. I also have been really busy wrapping up our school for May. May is such a struggle. October and May are so hard for me. And we are going to do school in the summer, but it's going to look like different programming than what we've been doing the last few weeks. So I'm, trying to wrap my brain around what that'll look like. And also, we're wrapping up our homeschooling co-op for the year. We actually had our last set of classes at the end of April. Then we had a presentation day. So, we also have to start planning for the fall. Registration opens up for us in June. And on top of all of that, me and my co-founders thought it was a great idea to open a micro school. So to expand our homeschooling co-op, and we're going to add a micro school. I think it was needed, but I also love that our organization meets different types of needs for homeschoolers. So if you're just not ready to commit, you can just come to field trips and park meetups and hangouts. If you're looking for something a little bit more consistent, but less commitment than a micro school, we offer co-op, which is, 1 day a week from 10 a.m. to 2. It's parent taught classes. But if you're needing a drop-off program, we're now offering the micro school that will be opening in August of 2025. We will be having hired teachers, a monthly fee, and, using very specific curriculums that align with our homeschooling community. And so that has been a big undertaking to set all of that up. And also, if I'm being 100% transparent, I know I've mentioned I'm in therapy and I started seeing, a new psychiatrist. I'm on meds. I think if that's the avenue you choose to go, no shame because I'm on meds, but it did take a few weeks to regulate in my system. And so I don't think I was presenting as my best self the last few weeks. And I don't think I had the capacity to do my podcast. And when I interviewed or did my podcast interview with Somebody's Mama, it wasn't so much about the interview in itself, but the conversation we had before and after about, really pushing ourselves on those hard days, showing up for ourselves. And I really liked that I had this conversation with two strong women who weren't necessarily focused on centering their family, but encouraging themselves and encouraging others. And so that motivated me to update my own podcast. I wanted to see if there's anything else. Oh, just like a quick funny moment. Not even a funny moment. I think it's an interesting moment. I was watching anime. I like anime, and um, I was watching Dragon Ball Z with my kid, with my 4-year-old, and somebody got knocked out. And I was like, oh, but I had like looked away, so I didn't see like fully what had happened. And I was like, what happened? And so my 4-year-old, he was like, Mom, he's unconscious. What? What does unconscious mean, Langston? And he's like, that he's asleep, but he's not dead. He just can't wake up yet. Huh, where did you learn that? I don't know. I just know these things. So he looks at me like I'm the dumb one. I was just shocked. So anyway, I downloaded the Crunchyroll app, and it gives you like all things anime. So me and my 8-year-old and my 4-year-old have been on a deep anime dive. And I know anime can be cringe. I don't like the young girls with like the overly exaggerated, body parts and the very mousy voices. And oh my gosh, and I can't stand how these characters are like based in, South Korea or Japan, and they're all white characters. Luckily, on the Crunchyroll app, there's been, more diverse stories being offered, and I do think that is a positive direction they should be going. But the storylines on anime are ridiculous. Like, they're better than novelas, like Spanish soap operas. Like, the drama is so good. But anyway, so this in a nutshell has pretty much what I've been up to. And, life just keeps on trucking, whether we are mentally capable of or not. But it's our job to just, press pause when we need it. So let's start with the big question. Why should we teach our kids about immigration, especially in a secular, progressive, homeschooling environment? Well, it's because immigration isn't just about what we see on the news or the hot topic or platform during election season. It is about real people. And for some reason, in our current political climate, people like to talk about immigrants or treat immigrants like they're these inanimate objects that you can just pick up and throw away. And that's insane. It is a complete lack. It's a mindset that lacks empathy. Because when we think about who they are and their stories, it is about parents who are looking for safety or trying to give their kids a better future. And, these kids who don't fully understand what's going on, but just know their parents brought them here, trying to figure out, this brand new world. Or I couldn't even imagine being a kid trying to figure out who you are in the middle of all of it. And immigration stories are American stories, because immigration is just a part of our everyday lives. It's in our communities, our friendships, and sometimes even in our own families. And it is so insane because I also have friends that I went to school with who I know were children of immigrants. And I knew so many who didn't even, necessarily have the correct, paperwork to be here. And I'm on social media with these same people who are, very much pro-Trump and pro the current conversation around immigration. And it's mind blowing. It's not mind blowing. It's actually them, I believe having like this internal battle where they think having this proximity to whiteness makes them like the right type of, Latino, Latina, Hispanic. And you're dispensable. Like, do you understand that? Like, they needed, your vote, and then you were dispensable. So anyway, I'm like, oh, I feel so sorry for you. And then I have these feelings of being angry because imagine if we had this collective power of just like brown pride and understanding our ancestry and our brothers and sisters to the left and right, what we could actually do. All right, I'll get off my soapbox, but when we do teach our kids about immigration, we're just not going over history or current events, but it's that layer of understanding because history does repeat itself, but we're helping them become more empathetic and aware, and they learn to understand why someone might leave everything behind for a chance at something better, and they can start asking the important questions about borders and laws and fairness and power, because those things don't always have easy answers, but they're always worth digging into. And it's that game of like connecting the dots between, again, that past and present, looking at history repeating itself. And when we're looking at history repeating itself, we have to understand that this country was built off the backs of indigenous people. It was shaped by colonization, and it's constantly evolving through immigration. I know a lot of you may have heard that America is this big melting pot, and it is, of immigrants. So for us to sit here and pass these laws and ship people off is inhumane. And I know for some kids, these stories, will hit close to home. And for others, I do think it's a great way to expand their worldview and try to build genuine connections across cultures. But either way, this is a chance to grow hearts and minds. And I think that's what we're really after with this type of homeschooling, when we're trying to, tie in being secular, progressive, social justice minded, and building empathy in our kids. So I think this is why we should teach our kids about immigration, because they are the ones who are going to have to deal with this in the future. Now that we've talked about why we should teach our kids immigration, let's talk about how to teach it in a meaningful way. So I did find this resource on the Immigration History Research Center's website. It is a completely free lesson plan that has all the things you need to teach it successfully. I mean, it gives you discussion questions, writing prompts, video resources. It's just so cool, and it's incredibly rich. So it's broken up into 3 units. The first unit is, what is immigration? It talks about the facts and the myths, and why people choose to migrate. And it goes into all of the things like war, natural disaster, job opportunities, family reunification. I think it's a great place to begin when we're developing that essential skill. Is it skill of empathy and curiosity? The second unit is refugees and asylum seekers. So this section digs into the differences between immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers. It also looks at international laws and the refugee application process and just the overall emotional toll and experience. And I love that they did include real world stories. Um, and I do think all of this, and I forgot to mention it earlier, is that this is I believe you could do middle through high school with this particular lesson plan, but I think it would take a little bit of elbow grease to do it for lower elementary. I am doing it as is with my 8-year-old. So it just really depends on where your kid is to fully digest this information. Unit 3 discusses youth immigrants and identity. And I do think this being the final unit is like the icing on the cake because it is such a powerful unit. It centers the voices of young immigrants and how they've had to fight to maintain their cultural identity, how they had to adapt to new environments and face stereotypes. It is a mirror for some and a window for others. I know for me, I saw a lot of the people I went to school with, like it really resonated with me. Um, and even like my harmful behaviors, which I I was ignorant, I didn't know, and it was definitely, a space for me to grow. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Ashley. But I really didn't understand. I knew some things, but I didn't fully understand the experience as it was. And so I really think that this curriculum is beautiful. I love that it's free. I do think it's easy to adapt, and you can stretch each unit over a couple of weeks if you really wanted to. I know we're going to take 2 weeks to really take a deep dive. And I've even paired some books to go with this unit or these lesson plans. And I hope that when you're going through this, like you really sit with reading these like personal narratives and not chalk it up as just like another fact or another date to remember. Like this is just like an up close and personal experience. And I love when a lesson or a unit study can just take you there. I have a 8-year-old and a 12-year-old who's soon to be 13. And so with this unit, I focused on what would be some good middle grade books to pair with this. And I know 2 books that I've mentioned before that I think they would be really great if you haven't read them is Front Desk by Kelly Yang, because Front Desk follows Mia Tang. She is a Chinese immigrant who helps her parents manage a motel, and they do a great job at explaining or making you feel her experience with racism, financial hardship, and growing with her as she finds her voice. And this book is based on the author's real life experiences, and it for a middle grade book, they really are. Kelly Yang did a great job of making at least my kids understand what resilience was, advocacy, and what it meant to be a kid having to deal with big adult problems. The second book I would suggest is Esperanza Rising by Pam Munoz Ryan. I love her work. So this is about a wealthy girl who's from Mexico and her life changes after her father dies, and she's, forced to move to California during the Great Depression and work as a farm laborer. I think this book really hit home for me because on my mother's side, my family, my grandfather was a migrant worker. He was a cotton picker. He worked as a farm laborer. And as I've, educated myself and fully understood, they very much lived in Like I remember him taking me, they lived in West Texas. Like the town is so small. I think there's less than like 1,200 people in the town now, but you had to drive a little bit of ways outside of their town, and like almost like a shack. I'm sure it was more, maybe not, when they were kids. And I believe there was 12 of them. And listening and putting the pieces together, like they lived a migrant lifestyle because they went up to like different states to find work, but they also lived like a sharecropper experience. So it was this like, systemic racism, a system to keep, brown people in poverty. And so I really felt Esperanza's personal journey in that book. So a book that we started reading this week, which we've, never read, was Efrén Divided. And this one's by Ernesto Cisneros. And we're reading this together as a family. And I want to be able to like talk through some of the hard experiences in the book. So the story centers on Efrén. He is a Mexican American boy whose mother gets deported, and that leaves him to care for his younger siblings while he's trying to keep up with school and hold it all together. And sometimes as adults we don't hold it all together, so now this is on his shoulders. And he's having to deal with immigration policies and having to deal with that type of raw honesty on how this country treats immigrants and the processes his mom had to go through. And I like that so far that it's been easy for my 8-year-old to understand. And at my big age, I'm able to relate to the text. And I'm hoping that my kids will really have a full understanding on how political decisions really affect lives, like real lives, real people, because these stories aren't just educational, they're opportunities for them to, connect, have a conversation, and most importantly, build empathy. I do think our country currently is lacking a whole lot of empathy. I'm pretty sure it was Elon Musk who said that, empathy is a weakness, or I don't quote me exactly because I don't want to be known for quoting that man. But I remember hearing that he said that empathy is a weakness, and, it is often weaponized to persuade well-meaning people to support bad ideas. And I also have a problem with like this ultra conservative, like Christian nationalism, where they're like going for the jugular. And while I'm not Christian, I thought empathy was built into Christianity. But then, shame on me. Again, that's my being naive. Naivete. What is it? Naivete? I'm butchering that word. Because ultimately, if I'm thinking about it, Christianity has been, a tool for control. So the people who were in power were using it to oppress the masses. And so how were they using empathy while they were controlling the masses? Okay, I'm getting off another soapbox. There are some books that you could consider being impactful when you're introducing immigration. I really think Dreamers by Yuyi Morales is it's so poetic, and it's beautifully illustrated, and it's about, this mother and her child who come to the US from Mexico and what their journey looks like. I know it gives, I feel like a very personal story on what it's like to build a new life in an unfamiliar place. And as a mom, I could really sympathize with the mother in this story, because when we're supposed to have all the answers and do all the things, we're flying by the seat of our pants, making sure our kids are good. And I think so much was said in this picture book. Another book I think would be important to share is Mama's Nightingale by Edwidge Dedicat. It tells a story about this little girl whose mother is living and residing in an immigration detention center. And for a picture book, it handles this difficult theme in such a powerful way, and it really highlights advocacy and how you can advocate for your family no matter your age. I wish I had access to this type of literature as a kid so that those seeds could start to be planted, because I feel like I had this awakening of just life, but again, it's because I challenge and push myself to read, and the more you read, the more you know, the more you understand, the more you're exposed to. But to do this so well in a picture book it's powerful. I don't know another word to use. The last book I'm going to suggest is Danby Leads the School Parade, and it's by Anna Kim. And it gives a story very much like Front Desk and Kelly Yang, the new kid in a new country, and except they are trying to figure out the first day of school and how welcoming a new friend should be celebrated and not seen as something negative if they are different from you or have a different background. And again, I like that. I believe in homeschooling, no matter the age, you can always use a book to tell a story and to build a lesson out with it. So I thought giving these suggestions would be a nice pair if you do decide to teach your kids about immigration. So to recap today's episode, we discussed the importance of teaching immigration in our secular progressive homeschooling journey and why these conversations matter. We want our kids to understand the world in a more deep, critical, compassionate way, and hopefully they'll also be justice minded. I shared with you a free lesson plan from the Immigration History Research Center. I wanted to shout it out and kind of explain the different units, more specifically because in the current times, I think resources like this might become scarce. And when we're looking at the head librarian of the Library of Congress getting fired because she was doing her job and receiving all books with all types of stories, and it was expected for her to not receive and categorize DEI or CRT type books. Or the African American Museum in Washington, D.C. losing funding, and HBCUs losing funding. And I know where I think if you're not ready to teach this in this season, just go download it and have it in your pocket and also share it, because I like that it teaches from a lens of truth and justice and humanity, and we need more of those stories to be shared. All right, guys, I am wrapping up my episode. It felt really good to be back. It felt really good to talk about this topic because it is a heart lesson. It is a lesson that resonates with your heart. And it feels good that I have people listening who also want to make sure that their kids understand that, behind every border crossing and visa and protest and policy, that there are people who are being deeply impacted. And these are people with dreams and fears and families and, most importantly, names. Like they're real. And as secular homeschoolers, we're not just teaching academics. We are actually helping, shape our kids' moral compasses because they're the next generation. And a part of making sure that happens, they need to know how to recognize injustice, how to listen deeply, and how to understand what it looks like to stand in solidarity. And even when those stories may be different from their own. And if you dive into any of the resources or books that I mentioned today, I'd love to hear about it. You can tag me on Instagram, Secular Homeschool Revolution, or I've been really jazzy on TikTok. You can find me on TikTok as secular_homeschool_mama because I felt like revolution was too long, but I'm there. I also want to thank you for being here and thank you for doing the very important work that you're doing and raising thoughtful, informed, and compassionate kids. I want you to keep revolutionizing your homeschool education and never shrink, always get big. And until next time, I am Ashley, and this is the Secular Homeschool Revolution. Also, don't forget to like and share. I really appreciate everyone who has shared my podcast. I see the numbers. Thank you, guys.
You have listened to the Secular Homeschool Revolution podcast. Please like and share.